goes into the ship. I don't know how that's going to work because it is a very contained space. Now, one could envision maybe it like being the Toronto bubble for the NHL or the NBA, where everyone gets tested frequently. I don't know. That might be something that they could do. Do rapid tests, have the tests available. No one gets on the ship unless you're tested negative. If you do that, then maybe. But having people come on and off the ship without that, I don't know how that's going to be considered a low-risk, safe situation.
Could be a possibility. I believe we're seeing that with United right now, offering their passengers those quick tests to at least their Hawaii route. You know, I get a lot of questions lately here, Dr. Mike. We hear about the NIH, CDC, the FDA. Where should we be getting our information from when it comes to this virus?
All right, you're taking a live look right now inside the debate hall in Cleveland at Case Western Reserve University. And we're just an hour away from the first presidential debate. Now, ahead of this, we want to talk to a reporter live in the field. Madeline Rivera follows Joe Biden around and has been for the last year and a half as a campaign reporter, following him everywhere. But Maddie, tonight, what are your sources saying? How is the former vice president feeling going into this first debate?
Well, the Biden campaign, or Biden rather, hasn't really talked to the press leading up to the debate. You know, he has a traveling press that follows him wherever he goes. He obviously boarded his flight to Wilmington, is here now in Cleveland. He's at a private residence here in Cleveland. The campaign didn't want to say whose home he's staying at, but he hasn't addressed the press before the debate. But from what we can tell, we saw Biden's Twitter account not too long ago. He posted a photo saying he's got items ready for the debate, including an earpiece and ice cream. So it kind of seems like he's in a good mood, or has a sense of humor at least, leading up to the debates, Andrew.
Now, Maddie, can you kind of tell us what the former vice president did in the hours before this today? I know he was coming from Wilmington, as you said, and can you even say what surrogates are saying? I know there was this pre-debate call with reporters. Kind of go into what was said this morning on that.
Right. So the Biden campaign had a phone call sometime earlier today, and they talked about Biden's strategy leading up to the debates. They said that Biden will not be fact-checking President Trump. And Simone Sanders was the one who said that. She's a senior advisor of Biden, and she said that the fact-checking will be left to the moderator, who, as we know, is Chris Wallace. But Wallace said he's not going to be fact-checking either Trump or Biden, so we don't really know how the Biden campaign will react to that. But the Biden campaign strategy has always been to just use this as an opportunity for Biden to make the case to the American people why Trump shouldn't be reelected. He will be highlighting and attacking Trump's record, especially on the coronavirus, which at this point has killed more than 200,000 people. So that's definitely something that Biden and the Biden campaign say Biden will be focusing on tonight, Andrew.
And Maddie, can you kind of just go into, there's been this back and forth amongst the campaigns, stipulations that they either did or did not agree to, and I know that's been getting a lot of play today. What was that about?
Right. So apparently the Trump campaign says the Biden campaign had agreed, and the Trump campaign had agreed, for an inspection before the debate to make sure that neither one of the candidates were wearing earpieces. And then the Trump campaign says the Biden campaign kind of backtracked on that and are no longer agreeing to it. The Biden campaign did address that during that same debate preview call this morning, and they said, Kate Bedingfield, the deputy campaign manager, said this is just absurd. Of course, Biden will not be wearing an earpiece at the debates. And the other thing that the Trump campaign says is that the Biden campaign has asked for 2 breaks within the 90 minutes of the debate, and Bedingfield says that they did not ask for breaks. So that's where that stands. But at the end of the day, Andrew, what people will really focus on is what will happen on that debate stage tonight.
Maddie Rivera live there in Cleveland, Ohio for us. Maddie, we want to talk to you after the debate wraps up, just to get your reaction and the campaign reaction as well. Thanks so much.
Looking forward to it, Andrew. Thank you.
All right, so again, you're watching Fox. You're watching NewsNOW from Fox. I'm Daytona Everett. This is Andrew Kraft, and we are going to be doing live coverage right before the presidential debate takes place. Andrew, this is so exciting. We have so many elements coming together, and we're just pumped to bring it to you live right here. And lots of big things happening for the debate tonight, including the coronavirus. Obviously, we're mid-pandemic right now, and this is going to be playing a huge role. So what do you think that's going to be doing?
Well, obviously, the coronavirus is on everyone's mind ahead of the debate here. Chris Wallace will be asking about that as well. It's one of the 6 topics, and both Biden and Trump will go toe-to-toe on either Trump's record on the coronavirus and how Biden would have handled it if he was president at the time. Now, Daytona is about to be talking to a debate coach out of Emory University. That's Dr. Ed Lee. And he's going to be talking about all things debate prep, how these candidates prepared for this very, very big moment. You know, who is playing each other? We've gotten reports saying that Chris Christie, Rudy Giuliani were playing Joe Biden with Trump. But then again, President Trump has always said that just being president is debate prep in and of itself. Obviously, you had throughout the week Joe Biden calling what in the press we refer to as a lid, saying he's not going to have any public events that day in order to prep for the debate. Now, sometimes that is very customary where a candidate will take a day or two to prepare before a big debate. But for those who aren't up to speed on the jargon, that is, what that means is there will be no public events that day. But we have a great interview lined up for you, and Daytona Everett will take it away from now.
Alrighty, so again, you are watching NewsNOW from Fox. We have a very exciting interview right now. This is Dr. Ed Lee, who's a debate coach coming out of Emory University. Ed, can you tell us a little bit about what we can expect coming up with this debate?
To take place, that it is very different from any of the debates that we've seen before. Not only do we have an overlay of a massive pandemic that we haven't had to deal with during a presidential cycle, but we also have an increasing number of people who are engaged in early voting that condenses the amount of time and energy and pressure that each of the candidates have to deal with. So I think that you're going to see a heightened set of interest and excitement on the part of both candidates in trying to make sure that they hone in on their particular messages and are communicating to the specific groups that they are interested in attracting and making sure are getting to the voting ballots, and also that they're crafting a message that the media is interested in picking up and relaying tomorrow morning.
Ed, as a candidate, how do you prepare for a debate like this, and how is President Trump preparing differently than Joe Biden?
It's interesting that there's the traditional way of preparing for debates where you spend time with issue briefs. You have people who come in and that they play the role of the candidate in speaking in the way in which they do, trying to use some of their mannerisms, trying to use some of their tactics that they engage in. And that's the way in which Joe Biden has taken on the preparation for this debate. It seems that Donald Trump is taking on the strategy that he used previously where there wasn't a lot of preparation that was given into the debates, and instead he showed up and that he was himself, and that he used a model that we would think of that's much like a group of people who are having a debate about who has the best football team, or having a debate at a local bar, that is far more around the atmospherics and the emotive and less around the logic of arguments, and that was powerfully successful for him in 2016. So there's no reason for him to change up.
Ed, we know that both of these candidates are very outgoing, very emotional. Do you think that Chris Wallace will have to step in and kind of get them back on track at any point?
The problem that I don't think that Chris Wallace has decided to play that particular role as a moderator, and that in fact, what no moderator has been successful at doing that. When I went back and looked at some of the 2016 debates with President Trump, that both the candidates and the moderators struggled with figuring out when he would speak, how long he would speak, and that the moderators extracting themselves from that particular role seems to be the best thing to do. Because it backfired on the moderators, sent some messages around the whether or not they were being impartial, what role that they played, and it's going to be left up to Joe Biden to figure out how to manage the way, in the unorthodox way in which Donald Trump chooses to use this particular forum.
Yeah, and speaking of this particular forum, we have some changes this year. It's mid-pandemic. There's not going to be that typical crowd size that President Trump is used to from his rallies. So do you think that is going to kind of deter him in his usual attack method?
I don't know if it will deter him from the usual attack method. I do think that this is one of the areas that there's a downside risk for him. That I think that one of the things that makes Donald Trump a brilliant communicator is that he has the capacity to read the needs of an audience and to respond to those particular needs. There are times in which he's off at doing that, but more often than not, he is really good at delivering a coherent and concise message at that moment that cuts through what the audience needs. And absent having that energy that comes from a large crowd, that comes from the reactions that he's getting from the audience, I would have some concern if I'm part of the campaign that maybe he gets a little bored with what's going on over the next 2 hours, and he seems to be lethargic, and he seems to be uninterested because he's not feeding off of that energy that's there. It's not going to deter him from his usual style and at his attacking manner. But I do think that during those moments of lull when Joe Biden is speaking, what are the non-verbals that he's sending out? Tremendous amount of our communication is done non-verbally. And that those are the things I will be looking at. How does he comport himself when Joe Biden is speaking, when there are conversations about things that he doesn't usually find interest in?
Ed, here's the big question. Do you think there's going to be a handshake?
No. And I think that ultimately the reason why you can explain there won't be has nothing to do with animus between these two candidates, but it has everything to do with the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic. And from Joe Biden's perspective, he wants to adhere to all of the public health norms that are there in order to message that the coronavirus is a serious issue and we need to take it seriously, even in the moment of a debate and even when need to dismiss with pleasantries like a handshake.
Ed, on your end, what are your expectations? Do you feel like Biden's going to go home with the W or President Trump?
So I would think that there are sort of two ways of thinking about who wins this debate. I ultimately think that the question of the answer to that is, what are you talking about tomorrow morning? If you are talking about the coronavirus tomorrow morning, Joe Biden has won this debate. If you're using the magic number of 750 tomorrow morning in talking about this debate, Joe Biden has won the debate. Conversely, if you are having a conversation about trade deals, that have decimated the manufacturing sector and created a tremendous amount of unemployment in flyover country of the United States, as Donald Trump identifies it, then I think he has won this debate, particularly if you're connecting that to Joe Biden's support for NAFTA and TPP and Joe Biden's inability to explain those particular issues. That ultimately, whoever is doing the best job of connecting the economy to the issues that are at hand is the one who will win this debate. And I actually think that there's a tremendous opportunity for Donald Trump to do some of the things he did in 2016 that was really successful in garnering a tremendous amount of support by explaining the ways in which the economy, jobs, unemployment is directly tied to the federal government and what actions the president takes.
All right, one of the last questions for you, Ed. We've seen some big bombshells come out, including that report coming from the New York Times. Do you think either candidate has something up their sleeve that might surprise us tonight?
I don't think that we have seen the October surprise in August and September, and I dare say that we will see some that will occur in October. I don't think that we will be surprised at this evening with any tradition, any bombshell. My concern for either candidate trying to use this as a gotcha moment is that it has such an opportunity to backfire because the nation is really yearning for a conversation around how are we going to get back to a sense of normalcy? How do we deal with this pandemic? How do we deal with the tremendous amount of unemployment? And a candidate that comes across as being uninterested or unwilling to have a conversation about things will be a candidate that loses a tremendous opportunity to gain some additional support.
All righty, Dr. Ed Lee right there. Thank you so much for joining us. If anything, this should be a very entertaining event.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
All right, thank you so much. Again, you are watching News Now from Fox. That was Dr. Ed Lee. He is a specialist when it comes to debates. He kind of broke down exactly what we can expect for this upcoming debate. So exciting stuff right there. Andrew Kraft, my co-host, sat down with some of the nation's best political reporters, all coming from Fox. So we're going to tune in to that virtual roundtable right now on News Now from Fox. Thank you so much for joining us.
And with the first presidential debate this evening, we wanted to get perspective from across the country on topics that will be discussed by the candidates. And for this conversation, we're joined by Fox 5's Tom Fitzgerald out of Washington, D.C., Claire Sims from Fox 5 Atlanta, and Mike Flannery with FLD in Fox 32 in Chicago. But Tom, let's begin with you. What is the feel in D.C. and on Capitol Hill ahead of tonight's debate? What are your sources saying?
Well, you know, on two levels, on a local level and a national level. Look, politics, you know, is the local sport here in Washington. But because of the coronavirus pandemic, we're not going to see the usual things we see in this city. There's not going to be any big bars having watch parties. There's not going to be big gatherings of partisans like we see every 4 years when debate time rolls around. That's history this year. But, you know, that's the spectator sport of this. You know, the real, you know, nuts and bolts part of this is that Donald Trump, as he enters this debate tonight, is now saddled with this story that has taken over this city tonight. This story out of the New York Times alleging that the president only paid, you know, federal income taxes 2 of the last 15 years. It has completely washed over the news cycle here, and all eyes right now are on the president to how he talks about this when he's asked about it. We're expecting he is going to be asked about it, but also how Joe Biden deals with this, because Joe Biden has been trying for days now to keep the focus on healthcare, keep the focus on COVID-19 and the coronavirus pandemic. Then we were met with the death of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, then the news cycle over her replacement on the court, according to the president, Amy Coney Barrett. Now this is just yet another thing that pushes Joe Biden away from that goal of keeping all eyes on the coronavirus pandemic.
That's right. Now, Fox News' our own Chris Wallace will moderate tonight. And last week, he released the 6 topics the candidates will cover. And just for our viewers, they are Trump and Biden's records, the Supreme Court, coronavirus, the COVID-19 pandemic, the economy, race and violence in our cities, and the integrity of the election. Now, Claire, Joe Biden's record is something that President Trump has been targeting for a while, and we hear it a lot at the president's rallies. He says Joe Biden has 47 years of experience compared with the president's 47 months. Now, is that something you expect will continue tonight?
Well, absolutely. It would not be a debate if they didn't go after each other. And of course, the big difference here, though, is going to be the flavor of that. So President Trump has long touted himself as a political outsider. He is a political outsider. He never ran for office until that 2016 presidential run. But he used that outsider status to really break through that huge number of Republican candidates we saw in 2016. And I think the playbook is going to be very similar. Those were people with political backgrounds. Joe Biden, as you mentioned, 47 years in the political sphere. So the president is really going to use that to his advantage to sort of differentiate himself. And it's something that we saw once he was whittled down to the Republican nominee back in 2016. It really worked to his advantage against Hillary Clinton. He not only went after her record, but also her husband's record, former President Bill Clinton.
That's right, Claire. Now, Mike, the former Vice President Joe Biden has been attacking the president's record on the coronavirus. But where else can we see Biden attack Trump tonight?
Well, I think, as Tom said, those income taxes open up a huge number of opportunities for Biden to attack. I will say, I think, though, that the president in the weeks leading up to this has made a tactical error. He has effectively lowered the bar for Biden's performance here, labeling him Sleepy Joe. Many of the president's allies have suggested that Joe Biden doesn't even know what century it is, that he's not going to be. So it reminds me of a long ago mayoral election here in Chicago where the opposition held rallies and they would chant "Dum Dum Daley" about Rich Daley, and first time he ran for mayor back in the 1980s. So came the debate. All Daley had to do was form a few English language sentences, offer some thoughtful proposals, and people were like, well, wait a minute, he's not a Dumbo. I think the president may live to regret some of that setup for this debate. But I do think that Biden, for the first time, we know with Chris Wallace, he's going to face aggressive questioning. There will be follow-up questions. I'm not sure that we've seen Biden in that kind of sustained form. This is going to go on for quite a while. There's going to be some back and forth. And we'll see just how well Biden measures up.
That's right, Mike. We haven't seen former Vice President Joe Biden sit for many interviews with very, very skilled inquisitors like our own Chris Wallace. He's been trying to get an interview with the former vice president. But let's switch gears here. I mean, Tom mentioned this earlier. The Supreme Court has just been on the top of the mind of everyone since the passing of Justice Ginsburg. And President Trump just this past weekend nominated Judge Amy Coney Barrett to fill her seat on the high court. How often do you think that'll be brought up tonight? And what is it resonating with voters, Democrats and Republicans? Do you think it'll drive turnout as well?
Well, we know it will be brought up. It's one of the subjects that Chris Wallace has already announced that will be part of the 6 that he is going to be talking about. If I can just add one thing to the end of what Mike said there, because he's absolutely right about what President Trump publicly has been saying about his opponent in these debates, Joe Biden. However, there's a subtext going on here, which we've heard over the last couple of days, Mike, from the Trump campaign. And what they're saying is quite a contrast with what the president's been saying. They've been saying, well, you know, Joe Biden, he was in the world's greatest deliberative body for decades. He's a skilled debater. He's an experienced debater. And they also have been pointing out his performance against Paul Ryan and Sarah Palin in his previous vice presidential debate. So it's a very interesting contrast. Mike's absolutely right. The president's been taking at length to say, these things about Sleepy Joe. But privately, we're hearing from the Trump campaign itself, though, that they are taking Joe Biden a lot more seriously than the president's public statements would suggest. On the Supreme Court, look, the Democrats know, they know that the Republicans have the votes to pass this nominee. Even though the Democrats are saying they will fight this, they will oppose this, at the end of the day, Lindsey Graham has already said he's calling this hearing of the Senate Judiciary Committee on October 12th. He will send this nomination to the full committee by October 22nd, and he expects the Senate to vote on this by the end of next month. That much we know. What we don't know quite yet, though, is where Joe Biden stands on this issue of packing the court. A lot of Democrats have been talking about this possibility of expanding the number of justices on the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, it's happened before, not since the 1800s, but it would be a radical shift for the legislative makeup to suddenly start putting more justices on the court based upon which political party happens to hold sway over the White House and the Senate at the same time. So expect that to be one of the questions that we're going to hear. Is Joe Biden in favor of packing the U.S. Supreme Court and adding more justices that see things the way he does?
Tom, that's right, and we've heard from...
Joe Biden wants to duck. He doesn't want to answer that stuff, and I think, Amy Coney Barrett, she's on the U.S. Court of Appeals based here in Chicago. I mean, even people who don't like her political point of view acknowledge her brilliance, acknowledge the warmth, the sense of humor that she displays. I think, in this upcoming Senate hearing, we're going to see a lot of that. I don't think Biden wants to get on the wrong side of that. And this issue of her conservative Catholicism, her being a Roman Catholic, she graduated the Notre Dame University Law School just a few miles from here. She taught there for 15 years. I don't think Biden wants to get on the wrong side of that either. I'll be real interested to see, and Chris Wallace is going to have to follow up with several questions on all of this stuff to try to nail Biden down. He's trying to duck it because he doesn't want to offend the left wing of the Democratic Party.
And Claire, just to bring up, Obamacare arguments in front of the Supreme Court start November 10th. And the Biden campaign is really hitting that hard, telling, their base, their voters, hey, look, your health care is at risk if Judge Coney Barrett is going to be on the court. And that'll obviously be brought up tonight.
Oh, definitely. I actually talked to our Attorney General here in Georgia. He's one of the Attorney Generals who signed on to that lawsuit and is very interested in Judge Barrett becoming the next Supreme Court Justice for the United States because he knows that that is going to be heard shortly after the election. And that's one of the reasons why Republicans here in Georgia say, well, we absolutely have to confirm someone as quickly as possible. That is definitely in the back of their minds that they would have this conservative majority on the court. And I know in the past from doing research on Judge Barrett that she has said some negative things about the Affordable Care Act. And so I think they feel like she would be on their side. Although we've also heard a lot of people who say, she's really a prudent student of the law and will do what the law dictates and may not be just as blanket, a blanket conservative vote on the court, as you might suspect.
And Claire, just speaking again about health care, we're in the midst still of the pandemic. Nearly 1 million people have died worldwide, including more than 200,000 here at home. But President Trump's response to the virus has been something Biden has hammered since early March. And President Trump maintains, he closed the border to China, he got states ventilators in time, Operation Warp Speed with vaccine progress. Will tonight's debate primarily focus on the coronavirus pandemic?
So debate watchers I've talked to have said that if former Vice President Biden can keep the debate centering around COVID-19 and the coronavirus response, that it's going to be a win for him. Every Democratic candidate on the ballot here in Georgia has been hammering the COVID-19 pandemic and what they see as a lack of response from the federal government. And here in Georgia, that has really trickled down to our governor. Governor Brian Kemp is a staunch Trump conservative. The president's endorsement helped get him sort of over the hump when he was in a runoff with a fellow Republican candidate. And so he has really been walking a very fine line, making sure that he is in line with what the president has been saying about COVID-19. And despite calls from a lot of people here in Georgia to mandate masks, he's never done so. So I think Democrats really want the failure or what they describe as a failure of leadership from the Oval Office to be a central point here, a central issue in November. They see it as a winning issue. And it also goes hand in hand with what we were talking about just a few minutes ago, the Affordable Care Act. There are a lot of people here in Georgia who are concerned about coverage for pre-existing conditions. We have ads here in Georgia running saying, keep in mind, COVID-19 is a pre-existing condition, and we had a spike not too long ago. And so there are a lot of Georgians who are concerned about that, and I think it will be a big issue as we move forward.
And obviously, the coronavirus pandemic has affected the economy as well. You know, building the economy was one of President Trump's platform promises in 2016. Pre-pandemic, the unemployment rate was at 3%. You know, now it's almost at 8%, I think 8.4 is the latest number. His base felt he delivered on that promise. But Mike, is this a spot where the president can shine and tout his record, or have the past 6 months kind of put too much of a damper on that and blown that part of his administration out of the water?
You know, I think the polling shows that it really is in the eye of the beholder here. I think if for those who are in the president's base, those glory days of 3% and change unemployment are what to point to, and that's where the president promises to get us back to. For those who are not admirers of the president, though, the unemployment, the coronavirus, I mean, as Claire has been pointing out, and Tom has said, I mean, we'll see how skillful Joe Biden is in making these connections. The messaging of Democrats out here in the Midwest in the past week or two, and certainly since the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, has been all about health care, COVID, Obamacare, the court, that case that comes up just a few days, the court will hear just a few days after the November 3rd election. All of that is linked. And the economy, they don't talk about that so much.
And we just want to bring Tom in here, too, as well. You know, Congress has yet, if at all, to pass another round of coronavirus relief. But we want to bring in also the New York Times report about the president's tax records as well that you mentioned earlier. You know, if they're seeing the president that they support, you know, not paying any federal income tax for the last 10 years, what does that say about his message on the economy?
Well, look, the president has a base of about 40% of the electorate that is going to be with him no matter what. So what's at stake in this debate for both of these candidates is to talk to that middle ground, to those blue-collar independents who have, you know, not made up their mind about this race. The danger for the president here is that when he gets in forums like this, he does tend to talk to his base. One of the skills he's going to have to put on display in this debate is the ability to branch out, to go to the underside. Look, it's, you know, late September here. People who are probably going to vote for Donald Trump are probably going to vote for Donald Trump no matter what he does in this debate. Likewise with Joe Biden. But there is a pool of voters out there that have still not made up their minds. And this first debate is the most critical of them all, because by the second, third debates, they may have already made up their minds. This news on the taxes, there's no way to shake this out. This is not good news for the president. But to Mike's point, you know, as we look at the economy right now, there are so many drivers of people's fears, worries, and concerns right now that to go back out there and start talking about the good times of 2016 might seem woefully out of step with where people's heads are right now. And on top of all of that, we haven't gotten to it, but we have a severe issue with race relations in this country right now. That's also going to be one of Chris Wallace's topics, and that is tied in to all of this as well as to how these candidates shape moving forward from this point, not just recounting what we've all already experienced in 2020.
Now, Tom, as you just mentioned, obviously...
And I want to jump in real quick,
Sure,
quick
Claire.
if I
Go
may.
ahead. Yeah.
Well, so we're talking about those undecided voters, and polling shows us that there really are a small number of people who are undecided. And those are the ones who really ultimately will make the decision, put one candidate over the top. But I was talking this morning to a Emory University debate expert, and his name's Dr. Ed Lee here in Atlanta. And what he mentioned that I thought was so smart was it's not about the undecided voters, it's about the unengaged voters, the disengaged voters who don't turn out. Those are the ones who President Obama was able to get to turn out for him in 2008 and in 2012. Those are the ones that they really need to be reaching out to. And I think something like Trump's taxes or COVID-19 or losing your job because of COVID-19, those are the things that really put people over the top and make them want to go to the polls. And like you said, this first debate is so critical because here in Georgia, the registration deadline for November is October 5th. So this debate is going to determine whether somebody is inspired enough to go and register to vote and able to cast a ballot in November. So I think that's really critical.
That's right, Claire. And just to bring up polling, wanted to tell our viewers the Real Clear Politics polling average for this week has Biden up by 6%. And some Fox News polls that were just released over the weekend, too, has Biden up in states like Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Nevada. Want to switch gears here again to something Tom alluded to. Now in 2020, President Trump has been running all summer on this platform of law and order amid the social unrest happening in the wake of the death of George Floyd in May. Protests and some riots across this country, especially in Chicago, in the wake of killings by police of people of color. Mike, will this platform resonate? And is this a spot where the president can shine in the debate? He's tied former Vice President Biden, his supporters are just like Antifa. He's said that multiple times. Mike, what do you think of that?
Well, Chicago is a city, while the whole political apparatus here and across the state of down in the state capital, Springfield, is Democratic and opposed to Trump. The help that Bill Barr offered in terms of several hundred, I think it was 300 additional FBI, ATF, DEA agents, etc., and some people from Homeland Security, the mayor here did accept, unlike in Portland, unlike in other cities. Bill Barr came and was bragging about some of the decline in the violence that has resulted since those 150 federal agents in Chicago. So, look, that is a huge issue here. That is something on which, unlike in other parts of the country, the Democrats here are willing to take help. Jeff Sessions, in the first year, in 2017, when he was the Attorney General, he came out here and was greeted by a number of the local political yokels who were thrilled that he was sending additional FBI and ATF agents at that time. So, yeah, that has some appeal here. But as 538.com ranks the state of Illinois, there is a less than 1% chance of Donald Trump carrying Illinois. So I don't think it's going to turn things around for him here.
And Claire and Tom, feel free to jump in. Obviously, you both live in cities that have been racked by these protests this summer. And like I said before, the president and his campaign are trying to tie Biden to these Antifa protesters and these rioters throughout the summer. But is it sticking, and has Biden done enough to denounce it?
Well, now I'll jump in here. Joe Biden has been painfully shy of press conferences throughout this entire summer. Yes, there's a COVID-19 pandemic that's been going on, which has limited his travel. But, the access to candidate Joe Biden has been slim. He comes out and he makes statements at somewhat irregular intervals. We heard from him last night briefly about the tax situation. But no, we do not get a steady, full-throated statement from Joe Biden on this. I suspect it's one of the things that he is going to be pressed on in this debate. Not only his reaction to all this, but what do you do about it? What are you going to do about race relations in this country? What are you going to do about the relationships between police departments, law enforcement agencies, and the communities which they are sworn to protect and serve? So, again, it's not just identifying the problem. When you get on that debate stage, you have to tell the American people what you're going to do about that problem. And, as of yet, Joe Biden has not gotten out there forcefully to denounce some of the more radical, violent elements that we have seen in these demonstrations. Washington, D.C., we were a city that, had federal troops literally spill out onto Lafayette Square here and dispense crowd control and tear gas measures to clear a crowd. That was one of the most remarkable things a lot of people who lived in this city say they had ever seen in their lives. So this is going to be front and center, right up there with everything else we've already talked about. Give you the Supreme Court, give you the economy, give it COVID-19, but the state of civil rights, social justice, and policing in this country, that's going to be right up there.
And just finally, the last topic, the integrity of the election will also be discussed. President Trump has been casting doubt for months now, claiming the election will be fixed because of mail-in ballots. And you're seeing more people than ever are choosing to send their ballot via mail this time because of the pandemic. Claire, do you expect the president to keep up this line of reasoning, and how can Joe Biden push back on it?
Well, I absolutely think the president is going to continue. It's something that has really sort of taken a little bit of a hold here in Georgia. We had over 1.5 million people request absentee ballots for our June primary. And for context, our presidential preference primary was supposed to be in March. It got pushed back and combined with our May primary for the other races, and then that again got pushed back until June. And the Secretary of State here in Georgia, who is a Republican, actually sent absentee by mail request forms to every active voter in the state ahead of the June primary because of concerns about safety and going to the polls in person. Now, he's not doing that for the November election, but we have had a lot of outside groups that are sending out absentee ballot request forms. There's a lot of voter education going on. There are a lot of people who are going to cast their ballots by mail. Now, I do want to make a quick distinction. Here in Georgia, we don't have what is commonly referred to as mail-in voting. You actually have to ask for a ballot. That is how our Republican Secretary of State says that we have some safeguards in place versus states like California where they mail out a live ballot to registered voters. So here in Georgia, at least, I know our Republican Secretary of State and our elections boards that are both Republican and Democrat are really heavily pushing absentee by mail voting, and they say that fraud is very limited. They did in Georgia create a task force to look into potential fraud, and they said there were about 1,000 ballots that they're looking into from the June primary, but when you consider hundreds of thousands of votes that were cast, it's really a tiny percentage, and again, those are not confirmed. Those are just ballots that they're reviewing.
All right, and we just want to get the final thoughts of all of you. Obviously, this debate was supposed to be at the University of Notre Dame tonight, but it's taking place in Cleveland on the campus of the Cleveland Clinic. Tom, your final thoughts. What are you going to be looking for? Who do you see coming out ahead following the debate tonight?
Well, the one thing I think I'm going to be looking for, which we have not talked as much about here, is how is Joe Biden going to deal with Donald Trump when Donald Trump does his Donald Trump thing and goes after Joe Biden like Joe Biden has not seen yet throughout any of those numerous Democratic primary campaign debates that we saw. Donald Trump is known for being tough. He throws everything, including the kitchen sink, at anybody who's standing at the opposing podium from it. We saw it when he was running for president in 2016 against those other Republicans. We saw it against Hillary Clinton 4 years ago. Joe Biden has to make a calculated decision. How much does he engage the president in those kinds of tactics? How much of his time does he use? Because remember, this is all on the clock. How much time does he devote to fact-checking what the president says? And is he able to rapid-fire respond to the president in the ways that the president is able to level these attacks as he has done so quickly and so often? It's a completely different kind of strategy that Joe Biden is going to have to bring into this debate than any of the previous ones that he'd faced against traditional political opponents.
And Mike, the president has said numerous times that just being president is debate prep in and of itself. There's been reporting that Rudy Giuliani and Chris Christie are playing Biden in the debate prep. What are your thoughts for tonight, Mike?
I think Tom is spot on. I would say that it's 4 years later, though. And I'm not sure that the president, saddled with this record, some good, some not so good, is going to be able to do what he did 4 years ago, and perhaps even what he's done from the White House press room podium on occasion. I think that the Biden people are already signaling that they're going to let a lot of this just kind of be Donald Trump noise, and they're going to focus on COVID. They're going to focus on the Affordable Care Act. They're going to focus, I think, too, on this tax issue. And again, here in the Midwest, those non-college educated, white, blue-collar voters just north of us in Wisconsin, across the big lake in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, I think that this tax return story, these revelations in the New York Times, open up a whole series of counterattacks that Joe Biden can launch into, aimed squarely at those white blue-collar voters who are at the core of Donald Trump's support. And in those states, I mean, he carried Michigan by less than 11,000 votes. They don't have to pick off very many. He carried Wisconsin by just a few more votes than that. Again, they don't have to pick off very many of those people for Joe Biden to win those critical states. And the other thing that I'm looking for, as I said earlier, is for Joe Biden to get a thorough cross-examination by Chris Wallace. Let's see how he stands up, especially on issues where these two men have sharp differences on divisive wedge issues like systemic racism. Joe Biden has said repeatedly it's going to be one of the things he focuses on as president. It's one of the things that a Democratic House and Senate, if that were to be the case, would focus on. Donald Trump says it doesn't exist. There is no systemic racism. I think this is a debate well worth watching, folks.
And that's right, Claire. Like Mike said, this will be obviously must-see TV. It's the first matchup between the two. And, Joe Biden and Donald Trump, they're both in their late 70s. Joe Biden, if elected, would be the oldest person to hold the office of the presidency. But, Claire, what are you looking for tonight?
I think you guys all have mentioned really great things, but one of the things, I'm going to bring up Dr. Lee again with Emory University here in Atlanta. One of the things he mentioned is we are in such a social media world that obviously people are going to be watching that 90 minutes, and I think the ratings are going to be probably pretty high. But it's what resonates the next day on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, wherever else these candidates may be. It's those little sort of moments that where they really land a good point or whatever the case may be with these two, we'll find out. But I think those things that people are still talking about on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and even into the weekend, those are the real moments I think we're going to be looking for.
Yeah, Claire, I mean, that's a great point. For those of voters who don't watch this every day like us, we'll see how much of this sticks with them in the first debate. Claire Sims, Mike Flannery, and Tom Fitzgerald, three of the top political reporters from across the country. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll have to wait and see what happens in tonight's debate. Thank you. All right, Daytona, that was a great roundtable we had earlier talking about all the topics that are going to be discussed at the debate in just mere minutes. Chris Wallace moderating President Trump, Joe Biden to take the stage in mere minutes. You're getting live pictures now of the debate stage itself, and we have representatives from a number of different organizations talking to the crowd, basically thanking the crowd there, saying what a monumental task it was just to get this off the ground in the middle of the pandemic. We were seeing representatives from the Cleveland Clinic in Cleveland, is partnering with Case Western Reserve University there, hosting this first presidential debate put on by the Committee for Presidential Debates. And Daytona, remember, the Trump campaign in the last couple months, they wanted a fourth debate. The Biden campaign was not going to have it. It was going to just be 3, as is customary. And so this is the first one right now out of Cleveland.
Democracy.
Taking now live pictures of the inside of the debate.
We are proud to support the Commission on Presidential
And we'll bring you more live pictures when we get that, and maybe some audience shots and what have you.
Yeah, again, Andrew, it's very light the way you're putting it, a momentous task for them to bring this debate to in person. Coronavirus kind of put up some roadblocks, but we are here. It is the first presidential debate. It's happening pretty soon. That's
right, a mere matter of minutes away, where President Trump and Joe Biden will take the stage. Not expecting a handshake, probably an elbow bump or something of the sort, following coronavirus guidelines. But Daytona, you have something you wanted to talk about with our viewers, kind of a fun, lighthearted thing that they can do during the debate and even before.
Yeah, like we've said, this event has become somewhat of an entertainment event for people across the country. So our friends at Fox Bet, they've actually put something together. It's a way for people to get engaged, and it's called Fox Bet Super 6. So we're actually going to test it out live right now here on NewsNOW from Fox. You can see it. I downloaded the app, Presidential Debate. You can see it right there. And we're going to test it out because we all want to get engaged in this social media realm of life. So,
right, and the idea is that the app will be kind of putting to the viewer questions about what they think will happen between the two candidates, President Trump and Joe Biden. Will they say certain words? Will they do certain things? Will they call each other out on certain things? So Daytona, what is one of the kind of test questions there that you could bet on?
Yeah, we've been talking like this is the Super Bowl because it is the Super Bowl of politics. So here's the first question. Which greeting will President Trump and Joe Biden do first? So there's a couple different answers there. We've been talking about this. Are they going to shake hands? Are they going to fist bump, elbow bump, air five, none/other? As of right now, 79% of the people have said that they are going to do none/other.
That'll be definitely something to watch.
Yeah, again, mid-pandemic, lots of things very different right now. The next question, will either candidate be seen wearing a mask during the Fox debate coverage? So far, it looks like people haven't really been wearing their masks. If you want to take a look at that, they're not wearing their masks up on stage. So probably not, I would say. But most people are saying that Joe Biden is, in fact, going to be wearing his mask.
That's right, Dana. We've seen the former vice president wear masks at many of the events he's been holding, his campaign events, even speaking at the podium with his masks on as well.
Here's the next question. Which nickname will President Trump use first? And as you can see, there's President Trump's family right there, Ivanka leading the way. They'll take probably, the front seats right there, front row seats for this first presidential debate. And again, the goal of this app is that it's fun, but it's also to increase engagement for the debate tonight. We're already all going to be engaged on social media, but this app is pretty awesome. The more people watching, the more people who may vote and get involved politically, because we all should be involved in this political realm.
And there you see Chris Wallace addressing the crowd that's gathered. Let's listen into that. And I don't know if he is mic'd up just yet.
Yeah, Andrew, I don't think they have him mic'd up right now, so we'll of course continue to monitor that with the debate just minutes away at this point. So again, that's Chris Wallace, who's going to be the moderator of the event. And we spoke about him a little bit earlier. He's saying that he's not going to be a fact checker tonight.
That's right. He was saying in recent reports this week that his job is to be as invisible as possible as a moderator, more of a facilitator. He said he's not going to fact check each claim made by Trump or Biden in real time. So may not be hearing much from Chris Wallace as far as keeping the time, asking the hard questions. You're seeing there Dr. Jill Biden, wife of Joe Biden, in the
Speaking out for her husband, who's going to be taking the debate stage once again tonight. So let's go back to a couple of these questions. They're actually pretty fun. So this next one says, which of the below will Joe Biden say the most? And the options are climate change, Barack Obama, Jill Biden, who we just saw right there, malarkey, Hillary, and none/tie.
Very interesting. You're seeing there members of the president's family, Tiffany Trump, his daughter, his daughter-in-law Laura Trump on the left, and his son Donald Trump Jr.'s girlfriend, Kimberly Guilfoyle, and they're all intimately involved in the 2020 campaign. Seeing their daughter and senior advisor, Ivanka Trump.
And Ivanka also being extremely vocal this past week. She was here in Phoenix, Arizona not long ago, along with the rest of the Trump family as well. All right, Andrew, I have another question for you.
Yeah, go for it.
As we wait, which of the below will President Trump say the most? We just talked about Joe Biden, what he's going to say the most. Well, the options for both. Looks like we did get a little bit of audio out of the debate.
And Daytona, remember that Donald Trump hasn't been on the debate stage since 2016. Oh, and there's First Lady Melania Trump, you're seeing there. Behind her, Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. And Melania Trump, First Lady, has just taken her seat, also wearing a mask of note. But like I was saying before, President Trump hasn't been on the debate stage since 2016. Joe Biden has. He's been on it quite frequently. As you remember, the Democratic primary lasted a very long time. There were so many candidates. He was up on the stage for at least 8 debates. But Joe Biden is no stranger to this debate stage at all. You'll remember in 2012, he faced off against Paul Ryan. And you'll remember in 2008, he faced off against Sarah Palin as Barack Obama's running mate. So he is no stranger to the debate stage, and neither is Donald Trump.
And again, we just want to introduce ourselves because we are the people behind the video. I'm Daytona Everett.
And I'm Andrew Kraft.
And this is News Now from Fox. We bring you everything live, including the first presidential debate, which is happening in Cleveland, and it should be kicking off in the next few minutes or so, and we're going to bring it all to you live.
Yeah, we wanted to show you some arrivals from earlier, too. You know, Air Force One coming into the Cleveland airport, Joe Biden's charter plane coming in from Wilmington. Let's play some of that video for our viewers, too.
Okay, we'll take this live hit first. That, again, is the podium stage right there, but yes, like Andrew said, we caught some of that video from earlier today of President Trump getting off Air Force One. We'll play that now.
So that's
And it does look like we're about a minute out from the presidential debate, so we're going to be standing by for that so we can have it all live for you here.
In Daytona, it looks like Chris Wallace has taken his seat in the moderator's chair, now waiting just moments away from Joe Biden and President Donald Trump to take the stage. As you can imagine, millions are probably watching around the country, around the world. And like you've said throughout our pre-debate programming, this will be must-see TV, not only for those who follow this every day, but for your average voter who may be just tuning in for the first time and are undecided.
This is exciting stuff right here, Andrew. It looks like we're about 20 seconds out from this event to begin. And we're 10 seconds out from the debate. The first presidential debate begins right now on NewsNOW from Fox.
Good evening from the Health Education campus of Case Western Reserve University and the Cleveland Clinic. I'm Chris Wallace of Fox News, and I welcome you to the first of the 2020 presidential debates between President Donald J. Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden. This debate is sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates. The Commission has designed the format, 6 roughly 15-minute segments with 2-minute answers from each candidate to the first question, then open discussion for the rest of each segment. Both campaigns have agreed to these rules. For the record, I decided the topics and the questions in each topic. I can assure you, none of the questions has been shared with the Commission or the 2 candidates. This debate is being conducted under health and safety protocols designed by the Cleveland Clinic, which is serving as the health security advisor to the Commission for all 4 debates. As a precaution, both campaigns have agreed the candidates will not shake hands at the beginning of tonight's debate. The audience here in the hall has promised to remain silent. No cheers, no boos or other interruptions, so we, and more importantly you, can focus on what the candidates have to say. No noise except right now, as we welcome the Republican nominee, President Trump, and the Democratic nominee, Vice President Biden.
How you doing, man? How are you? I'm well.
Gentlemen, a lot of people have been waiting for this night, so let's get going. Our first subject is the Supreme Court. President Trump, you nominated Amy Coney Barrett over the weekend to succeed the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the court. You say the Constitution is clear about your obligation and the Senate's to consider a nominee to the court. Vice President Biden, you say that this is an effort by the President and Republicans to jam through an appointment and what you call an abuse of power. My first question to both of you tonight, why are you right in the argument you make and your opponent wrong, and where do you think a Justice Barrett would take the court? President Trump, in this first segment, you go first, 2 minutes.
I'll tell you very simply, we won the election. The White House. Anyway, in fact, some of her biggest endorsers are very liberal people. from Notre Dame and other places. So I think she's going to be fantastic. We have plenty of time.
Why are you
Even if we did it
right
after
to make
the
argument
election
you make,
itself. I have a
and
lot
your
of time
opponent
after the
wrong?
election, as you know.
Where do
So
you
I think that she will
a
be
Justice
outstanding. She's
Barrett
going to
would
be
take the court?
as good
President
as
Trump, in the
anybody
first
that has
segment, you go
served on that
first.
court.
2
We
minutes.
really feel that. We have a professor at will tell Notre you Dame, very highly simply, we respected won the by all, election. said she's the single Elections greatest have
consequences.
student he's ever had. He's
We have
been
this-
a professor for a long time at a great school. And we won the election, and therefore we have the right to choose her. And very few people knowingly would say otherwise. And by the way, the Democrats, they wouldn't even think about not doing it. If they had, the only difference is they'd try and do it faster. There's no way they would give it up. They had Merrick Garland, but the problem is they didn't have the election, so they were stopped. And probably that would happen in reverse also. Definitely would happen in reverse. So we won the election, and we have the right to do it, Chris.
President Trump, thank you. Same question to you, Vice President Biden. You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, thank you for doing this, and looking forward to this, Mr. President.
Thank you, Joe.
The American people have a right to have a say in who the Supreme Court nominee is, and that say occurs when they vote for a United States senators and when they vote for the President of the United States. They're not going to get that chance now because we're in the middle of an election already. The election has already started. Tens of thousands of people have already voted. And so the thing that should happen is we should wait. We should wait and see what the outcome of this election is, because that's the only way the American people get to express their view is by who they elect as president and who they elect as vice president. Now, what's at stake here is the president's made it clear he wants to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. He's been running on that, he ran on that, and he's been governing on that. He's in the Supreme Court right now trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, which will strip 20 million people from having insurance, health insurance now, if it goes into court. And the justice, and I have nothing, I'm not opposed to the justice, she seems like a very fine person. But she's written before she went on the bench, which is her right, that she thinks that the Affordable Care Act is not constitutional. The other thing that's on the court, and if it's struck down, what happens? Women's rights are fundamentally changed. Once again, a woman could be pay more money because she has a pre-existing condition of pregnancy. They were able to charge a woman more for the same exact procedure a man gets. And that ended when we, in fact, passed the Affordable Care Act. And there's 100 million people who have pre-existing conditions, and they'll be taken away as well. Those pre-existing conditions, the insurance companies are going to love this. And so it's just not appropriate to do this before this election. If he wins the election and the Senate is Democrat or Republican, then he goes forward. If not, we should wait until February.
All right. There aren't 100 million people with pre-existing conditions. As far as the say is concerned, the people already had their say. Okay, Justice Ginsburg said very powerfully, very strongly, at some point, 10 years ago or so, she said a president and the Senate is elected for a period of time, but a president's elected for 4 years. We're not elected for 3 years. I'm not elected for 3 years. So we have the Senate, we have a president.
He's elected to the next
during
election.
that period of time, we have an opening. I'm not elected for 3 years. I'm elected for 4 years. And the 100 million people, Joe, the 100 million people is totally wrong. I don't know where you got that number. The bigger problem that you have is that you're going to extinguish 180 million people with their private health care that they're very happy with.
That's simply not true.
Well, you're certainly going to socialist. You're going to socialist medicine.
We're now into, gentlemen, we're now into open discussion.
Open discussion.
Open discussion. Yes, I agree. Go ahead, Vice President.
Number one, what I proposed is that we expand Obamacare and we increase it. We do not wipe any, and one of the big debates we had with 23 of my colleagues trying to win the nomination that I won, were saying that Biden wanted to allow people to have private insurance still. They can. They do. They will under my proposal.
It's not what you've said, and it's not what your party has said.
That is simply
your party
a lie.
doesn't say it. Your party wants to go socialist medicine.
My party is
and
me.
Socialist
right
healthcare.
Now, I am
and
the
they're going to dominate
party.
you, Joe. You know that.
I am the Democratic Party right now. The platform of the
Not
Democratic Party
Harris.
is what I, in fact, approved of. What I approved of. Now, here's the deal. The deal is that it's going to wipe out pre-existing conditions. And by the way, The 200,000 people that have died on his watch, how many of those have survived? Well, there's 7 million people that contracted COVID. What does it mean for them going forward if you strike down the Affordable Care Act?
Joe, you've had 308,000 military people dying because you couldn't provide them proper health care in the military. So don't tell me about this.
I'm happy to talk about this.
And if you were here, it wouldn't be 200, it would be 2 million people because you were very late on the draw. You didn't want me to ban China, which was heavily infected. You didn't want me to ban
all right, gentlemen,
which was heavily infected. You would have been much later, Joe.
Mr. President,
much later.
Mr. President.
You're talking about 2 million people.
Mr. President, as a moderator, we are going to talk about COVID in the next segment, but go ahead.
Let me finish. The point is that the president also is opposed to Roe v. Wade. That's on the ballot as well in the court. And so that's also at stake right now. And so the election is already
begun. You don't know it's on the ballot. Why is it on the ballot?
Because
why is it on the ballot? It's not on the ballot.
It's on the ballot in the court.
I don't think so.
In the court. Well,
there's nothing happening there.
Donald, would you
and
just
you don't know her view on Roe v. Wade. You
I don't
know
know
her view.
Well, all right. Let's talk. We got a lot to unpack here, gentlemen. We got a lot of time. So on health care, and then we'll come back to Roe v. Wade.
All right.
Mr. President, the Supreme Court will hear a case a week after the election in which the Trump administration, along with 18 state attorneys general, are seeking to overturn Obamacare, to end Obamacare. You have spent the last...
Because they want to give good health care.
If I may ask my question, sir.
Good health care.
Over the last 4 years, you have promised to repeal and replace Obamacare, but you have never in these 4 years come up with a plan, a comprehensive plan to replace Obamacare.
Of course I have.
Well,
I got rid of the individual mandate.
I'm going to give you an opportunity.
I got rid of the individual mandate, which was a big chunk of
Obamacare.
That is absolutely a big thing. That was the worst part of Obamacare.
Sir,
Chris, that was the worst part of Obamacare.
Let me ask my question.
Well, I'll ask Joe. The individual mandate was the most unpopular aspect of Obamacare. I got rid of it.
And
we will protect people with
President, I'm the moderator of this
conditions.
debate, and I would like you to let me ask my question, and then you can answer your question.
Go ahead.
You, in the course of these 4 years, have never come up with a comprehensive plan to replace Obamacare, and just this last Thursday, you signed a largely symbolic executive order to protect people with pre-existing conditions 5 days before this debate. So my question, sir, is what is the Trump health care plan?
Fine. Well, first of all, I guess I'm debating you, not him, but that's okay. I'm not surprised. Let me just tell you something, that there's nothing symbolic. I'm cutting drug prices. I'm going with favored nations, which no president has the courage to do because you're going against Big Pharma. Drug prices will be coming down 80 or 90%. You could have done it during your 47-year period in government, but you didn't do it. Nobody's done it. So we're cutting health care.
What about
all of the
pre-existing
things that we've done,
He has not cut health
I give you an